something that I'm gonna have a room about. We need to have a room that talks about how to decolonize teacher education programs.
Mm.
And the reason why is because think about your think about our pre-service teaching experience, right? We had to learn about Jean Piaget.
Yep.
We had to learn about Lev Vygotsky and the zone of proximal development. Edward Skinner,
Mm-hmm.
behaviorist theory.
Mm-hmm.
None of them people are black.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot, and they're not going to come through the door to save me when a kid is cursing me out. Okay. Now, that's not to say that, listen, you get me, listen, and that's not to say that there's no space for educational theory. I believe there's a place for it, and it does help as a framework to really put into context different things that we do in education. But if we're going to talk about how to teach Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, we have to understand the cultural component of it.
Absolutely.
Because the way that you interact with Black students is not going to be the same way you interact with a white student.
Naturally.
The same way you interact with a Latinx student is not always going to be the same way you interact with a white student or an Indigenous student. There are differences in interaction. That's why we always hear about differentiation, not just with the instruction, but in the way that we interact with people. Think about coaches for a second. Coaches understand the different personalities in the locker room.
Right, right.
Coaches understand who they can yell at.
Mm.
Coaches understand who they can pull to the side and just give a pat on the back to.
Right.
And they also understand who they need to just give space to let them decompress before they engage with them and have that conversation. That's the same thing with teaching. And to have a standardized test that focuses on just European educational psychologists and theorists is totally contradictory to the work that we're trying to do when we talk about anti-racist teaching and culturally responsive teaching, because we're trying to interact with our students through the lens of Europeans. Think about that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's I mean, what Frantz Fanon said: "Black skin, white mask." You know.
Oh, hold up, bro. Hold up, bro. Hold up.
Oh man.
Come on, bro.
Yeah, man. Yeah, bro. Double consciousness, right? You can't, no matter how much you put that mask on, you can never be white. And that kills you.
Listen.
And we kill our kids with that.
And this is crazy. This is the book, it's books like these that our teachers need to read.
Yes.
Okay? And this is not a knock on the Ibram Kendis and the Robin DiAngelo of the world, because I do believe that they do great work. And Ibram Kendi is a Temple alum. He got his doctorate at Temple University, which is my alma mater. So I'm always going to support my Temple brothers.
Oh.
But in the end, there were people who were doing this work before they did. And we have to center them. Like Frantz Fanon, how many people outside of African American majors, Black study majors, are reading Frantz Fanon? You're not going to see this in a teacher education program.
Yeah. Yeah, he was.
But yet, yeah.
His books was put on a blacklist. You know that, right? The Wretched of the Earth. Yeah, the Wretched of the Earth was put on the blacklist. And you know, he didn't write that book. He wrote that book because he spoke it, and someone wrote it for him because he had like some like disease or something like that.
Yeah. So look, now that we're on this topic, I feel like it's an opportunity to just share some books that people
Yeah,
should
go
read,
ahead, bro.
right? So I'm gonna just go to my book shelf right here. Oh, I see a couple books right here already, right? Come on, like,
All you had to do
and
was touch. You didn't even have to pick.
I just got a couple. Let me
Yeah,
see if I can pull one more. Um, yeah, I'm gonna pull this
Amos
one
Wilson.
too. I'm gonna pull this one too.
Is that Amos Wilson
Oh,
right there? No, that's
come on, bro, you're good, man.
Yeah, man. Come on, man.
Come on, man. You already know, bro. Shoot, you already know.
Yeah,
But
I
I
see you got
got,
Pablo Ferreira.
man. We have what?
Yeah,
Amos Wilson.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That's
Awaken the
study.
Natural Genius of Black Children. Okay, this is a
Talk
book that you
about it.
need to have. Okay, and it's not just black teachers; it's every teacher. If we're talking about anti-racist practices, right? Get the books.
Yeah, I
And
got a
better
quote
yet,
from that book. I,
yep.
I got a quote from that book. Hold up. The quote I
All
had,
right.
I'm about to say it real quick, bro, because yeah, we vibing, man. I got one
Yeah.
last question, but this is great, bro. Hold up. So the quote is, he said, African children are naturally precious and gifted. They begin life with a natural head start. And from that book, he talks about like I think it's Ghana. It's like a group of babies that they're comparing it to like other babies, and he's comparing how when the black babies, even with poverty, even with just poor resources, their cognitive skills are just months in advance to the other babies. And he uses that study to pretty much say what he just said. Absolutely, bro.
No, absolutely. But Franz Fanon is somebody who people need to get familiar with,
Yes.
and there are a few other people too. Now, most everybody knows about Paulo Freire,
Yeah.
or should know. This is a must-have. This book is a must-have. Every educator needs to have this book and any book that Paulo Freire has written in their library.
Yeah, man. Yeah, because people love revolutionaries, but they negate the fact that they were like scholars. Like they were like not only talking that, but they were writing that. You know what I'm saying? They were teaching that.
Yeah.
They were talking. They were acting. Stokely Carmichael said like he was talking about like the revolution. He was like, they'll pick up the gun, but when I'll give them a pamphlet, they want to drop it down. He's like, once you dropping the pamphlet down, the pamphlet is where the power's at. The gun
Come
is,
on now.
Fred Hampton, he
Come
talked about it. He was like, where's the education program? You got to have an education program, because if you don't have the education program, then the oppressed becomes the oppressor. And then you get what happened in Africa, in certain parts during the 60s, where you had these because communism was like the mantra of that time. Everybody was trying to be a communist because it was anti-capitalism. But communism was in itself, in its essence, was perverted too, because it didn't really get rid of inequality like that. Because you had Mao, you had Stalin, they were just dictators and they just took advantage. So even the Bolsheviks, right? They took advantage of the Russian Republic, but then they ended up becoming, they ended up leading to what Stalin became, and I think the Black Panthers and revolutionaries, they were really, really using those philosophies to apply to what was happening in America and South America, but some fall victim to it, some didn't.
Right. And that's the whole reason why we talk about Fred Hampton and even the Black Panther movement. People always talk about the militancy of it and the radicalism of the Black Panthers, but what they don't realize was that even with Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, and all of them, these were brothers with PhDs. These were brothers who were highly educated.
They could write.
And they could write. Extremely brilliant. They started a breakfast program which had an academic component. So when you think about what's happening in our K to 12 schools, they were hip to that in the 60s, which is why in Oakland they had these breakfast programs.
and that's what started the lunch, right? I heard that's what like kind of started like free lunch programs, right?
Right.
And that's what tore the Black Panthers down because they were like, you can't be teaching the kids.
Right. But but everybody talks about J. Edgar Hoover and COINTELPRO and how they pretty much infiltrated, the party, um, and pretty much took them apart. But you never really hear about the community work that they did.
Yeah, man.
That doesn't really get centered. We always talk about like Black Panther, the Black Panther radicalism and just the fact that they were like,
Rebels.
rebels and whatever. Like we always hear that narrative, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is also the reason why we had freedom schools in Philadelphia. That's why we have freedom schools, because we realized that whatever we do education wise has to be grounded in the communities that we're in. Right? And when you think about pedagogy of the oppressed, this is what Paulo Freire talks about. He says it in many different ways, but he's pretty much saying the same thing, and that's in order for a revolution to start, it can't be a situation where I'm just giving you all the knowledge and you're just a passive recipient of that knowledge, which is what he calls banking. It's supposed to be reciprocal. It's supposed to be reciprocity. I'm gonna share some knowledge, but guess what? You're gonna share some knowledge back to me.
Right.
Because in order for us to have a true revolution, it's gonna require the collective efforts of everybody. Not just me, the teacher. So when we think about classrooms, right? I don't know everything. Just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean that I know everything. The best teachers humble themselves and they give students agency.
Yeah.
They give students the space and the license to challenge your thinking in order to push their own thinking and to build their own agency. That's true education. It's not me regurgitating math facts. It's not you talking about the periodic table and then spitting it back out to you so they can pass a test or a quiz. That's not education. It's about pushing their thinking to the point where they can go into the world and question everything that is around them without you having to be there. That is what education ultimately should be about.
Wow.
It should be about that, but it isn't. But I do have to put, I got to throw.
Who's that? Is that Dr. Ben? What's that? Is that
Dr. Asa Hilliard?
Okay,
Not his. Oh, you got, bruh.
Oh, those are Dinker symbols. This is about Dinker symbols?
These are Dinker symbols, right? So Jinyami.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dinker symbols. But this book.
What's the book about?
Seba, the Reawakening of the African Mind by Dr. Asa Hilliard.
Okay.
If you are a teacher, I don't care what your racial background is, and you're teaching Black children, African children, this book should be in your library. This book probably should get blacklisted because he's speaking so much truth in this book, man. Oh man. So yeah, Seba, the Reawakening of the African Mind. Dr. Asa Hilliard.
I love it, man. I love it.
And he passed away. Oh. Yeah, he passed away maybe a few years back. I can't remember what year. Maybe early 2010, around there. But he is somebody who, man, if he was alive today, he would have so much to say about what's going on with this anti-racism wave, what's going on with our teacher education programs. I mean, yeah, there's just so much I could say about him, but you just have to read the book and you'll understand why I'm like, y'all gotta go cop it.
Go,
Y'all
man.
gotta get this book because,
Go, man.
and this goes back to my original point, and I promise this is my last point because I know we're trying to wrap
Good.
things
Go ahead.
up, but you
Good.
gotta be going, man.
Nah, you good, bro. Go ahead, man.
This is why we need to decolonize teacher education programs because guess what? They're only speaking to one specific audience, and we know what audience that is. But yet, they talk about diversifying teacher education programs. Wow, we don't see a whole lot of blacks and Latinx and indigenous people. So let's find a way to get those numbers right. So they go through this whole recruiting and retention initiative, right, where they try to look for people, but it feels like tokenism because it's not so much about changing the quality of the program. It's more about the cosmetic change. Like, okay, it's like the whole cosmetic performative change. Like, okay, let's get a brochure with all different people from different
Yeah.
backgrounds just to create the perception that we are all about diversity. Okay, you're about diversity, but are you about decolonization? Those are two different things, and they're not one and the same.
At all.
And I think what's happening is people are using those two terms, diversity and decolonization, interchangeably.
Yeah.
And that is a big no-no. Big no-no. So we got to address that. We have to address that because the reason why so many teachers, particularly white teachers, struggle to teach in urban communities is because they never had a chance in their teacher ed program to learn about urban communities, to learn about black people, black consciousness, African consciousness. And I'm not saying you have to be an expert on it, but you have to have at least a foundational knowledge of what it is.
I mean, if you don't know how to exist, if you don't know how to coexist, you have to learn how to coexist. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
Like think about James Baldwin. And I'm sure you're familiar with James Baldwin's speech for teachers, a talk to teachers.
No, I'm not. I'll look it up though.
Oh, you know what? Wow. Let me see if I can
But you gotta.
I'm
You
gonna
got,
pull it up. I'm gonna pull it up real quick,
all right,
and
man.
I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it.
All right.
But James Baldwin, a talk to teachers, is is not a book. It's just a speech that he delivered in 1963 to teachers addressing racism in America and empowering Black students to fight for justice.
Yeah, man. Go ahead and read that. Well, that's a great way to close.
Yeah, so I'm gonna
Love
go
me
ahead
some
and
James
read
Baldwin,
the,
man.
the first paragraph. I'm gonna read the first paragraph because it's a bit long, but if you just Google "Talk to Teachers" by James Baldwin, it'll come right up. Okay, here it goes. Let's begin by saying that we are living through a very dangerous time. Everyone in this room is in one way or another aware of that. We are in a revolutionary situation, no matter how unpopular that word has become in this country. The society in which we live is desperately menaced, not by Khrushchev, but from within. To any citizen of this country who figures himself as responsible, and particularly those of you who deal with the minds and hearts of young people, must be prepared to go for broke. Or to put it another way, you must understand that in the attempt to correct so many generations of bad faith and cruelty, when it is operating not only in the classroom, but in society, you will meet the most fantastic, the most brutal, and the most determined resistance. There is no point in pretending that this won't happen. James Baldwin. That was just the first paragraph. But so much knowledge in that first paragraph. That was 1963. We are in 2021. This speech was given 58 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're still talking about it today.
Yeah, and it still hits home, man.
Like, and it's speaking about everything.
Yeah, bro.
The appropriation of the hashtags, cultural appropriation, right? White folks seeing racism and saying they don't see color. The microaggressions. Good meaning white folks who say they want to help, but when they see racism in their classroom or in their society and they have black friends and peers in their schools, they turn away and pretend that nothing's happening. He talks about it in that one paragraph. Yeah, and the fact that when we talk about revolution, when we talk about speaking up, yes, there's a risk involved. You may lose your job. But ultimately, do you want to live the rest of your life with a bad conscience? Or do you want to do what's in your heart and what's right for kids? Because if you're truly an educator, you can see that there's so many things in our system that's wrong and that's counterproductive to students, particularly black students. And you have to speak up on it. So for white people, you want to be an ally, you want to be a co-conspirator, as Dr. Bettina Love talks about in her book. You know, we only just want to survive. This is the stuff that you have to do.
Yeah.
Holler at your white friends. When they say something, you got to check them.
Check them.
When there's something that's not right in the classroom, you got to speak up and say something. Don't just ignore it. Now's the time for us to be bold. Now's the time. We can't just let things slide and then commiserate about it when we didn't take a proactive step towards resolving that issue. Exactly. We're done with that now. We got to hold people accountable. Elected officials at the federal and state levels, everybody got to be held accountable for the educational experiences of our young people. And that's how I'm going to end it.
And that's the simplicity, y'all. I got my brother Kwame all the way in the motherlands, man. You in the motherland. Dropping the gems still, brother, man. I appreciate you coming back with me, man. I hope it felt like a conversation, because it definitely felt like a conversation for me, brother, man.
Man, I'm full. I'm full. I'm full, man. Like, I might as well just stay up now and just keep the thing moving, because you got me going, bro. Hey, the adrenaline's up right now. You got me going. I'm the
entire time.
You ignite. Listen, you ignite that fire, man. You ignite that fire. Yeah. So I appreciate you for
listening.
You know, give me the space to say my piece and to just break bread with you, man. You're doing something special with this Teach Simple podcast, and I hope that more people tune into it so they can get this knowledge as well. Because guess what? It's gonna feed the community. It's gonna feed the soul. It's going to elevate our profession.
Hey.
And that's what ultimately it's all about. And I appreciate the Black Panther background.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate that, because I think
hurt, bro. Hurt.
Yeah, man. I think that movie, I don't think people realize just how relevant that movie was and how it is relevant now. Just some of the themes that they were communicating, either subliminally or directly throughout the movie, they speak to what's happening now. But yeah, so there's a lot there.
Love for you, man. It's a T Simple podcast. Where can they find you, man? And what's the things you got coming up?
Yes. So we have our Identity Talk apparel shop where we sell teacher apparel. So anything from hoodies, t-shirts, other accessories. You could check that out on Instagram. with the handle at ID Talk underscore apparel.
Okay.
You can also go to the website for everything Identity Talk, and that's going to be www.identitytalk4 numeral 4 educators.com. And that's where you'll learn more about my consulting services. You'll learn about the podcast, the shop. It's pretty much the hub for everything Identity Talk. And we have some things growing up for 2021, so we're excited about it. We currently have a virtual program for early career teachers who are looking to shape their teacher identity, which is also the title of my first book. So we have our course called Shape the Teacher Identity 101, which is all about the teaching of this book, and it's pretty much helping to decolonize teacher ed programs, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, because there are so many gaps that so many teachers come out from these programs with. And with Shaping the Teacher Identity 101, we're trying to fill those gaps. We're trying to address the things that they may not have gotten in those programs so that when they go into the classroom, they feel more empowered and they have more tools to not only get through that first year, but to be in there for the next 10, 15 years, because teacher turnover rates are still on the rise, especially with COVID. Retention rates are very low because who wants to stay in a profession where they get disrespected all the time, not just by their school district officials, but by people who don't even do this work.
Oh,
I mean, let's be real about that.
Everybody be hating on teachers, man.
Why are people surprised by low retention rates? If people are shitting on me, and excuse my language, but if people are shitting on me every day, and they don't know what the fuck I do,
that's gonna mess your head up.
That's gonna mess your head up, and that goes back to the self-efficacy. Goes back to that. When all these things happen, you have to find that motivation within you to do what you have to do for these kids. And that's ultimately what Stay True to Teaching You is all about. It's all about staying true to your morals, staying true to your principles, staying true to your core. Even in the midst of corrupt politics, even in the midst of the racism that happens within our school districts and our school settings, in the midst of low pay, in the midst of standardized test scores that are culturally biased, but yet we're still trying to force feed these tests to our kids. In the midst of legislation that continues to maintain the status quo in education, we still have to do the work necessary to help our students grow and thrive. And that's what Stay True to Teach You is all about.
Got nothing but love for you, man. Make sure y'all say peace to each other, man. Y'all have a good night. Take it easy, y'all. Peace.
Peace.